Welcome to Career Tools. This week, choosing a book. Here we go. You and I talk about reading books all the time. We're constantly reading. We read way too much, as you well know. We've said before that reading is the easiest thing in the world to do, the easiest way to develop, and so on. And yet people ask us all the time, what book should I read, right?
Yeah, they just don't know where to start. And I guess if you walked into Barnes & Noble or looked at Amazon, it's pretty overwhelming. There's some ridiculous number of books that are published each day, let alone year.
Yeah.
So, where do you start? So that's what we wanted to give some people some help with.
Yeah. Simply, how do you choose a book? And we've got 3 recommendations. Why don't you give them to us?
Okay, so the first one is look for 3 great ideas.
That's my favorite. It used to be my favorite. It's not anymore, thanks to Amazon. And we'll explain that. Okay.
Yeah, sure. So look for the most recommended book on Amazon.
That's my new favorite.
Based on the fact that gazillion people cannot be wrong. And then the last one is get a recommendation from Manager Tools.
And actually, that's not my favorite. I'm aware of our recommendations. I think very highly of them, and yet still, Amazon
it's not the first place you'd go.
No, well, I've read them all, right? I mean, yeah.
There is that.
So look for 3 good ideas. This is my favorite way of doing it. Now, I spend so much time in airports. I've got physical bookstores. Let me put it this way. 2 years ago, I had time in airports. I don't anymore. Now I'm and you guys have me moving quickly to the next thing, and my connection time seems shorter, and
we make you do phone calls.
Yeah, I don't dawdle. I'm on the phone. I'm that guy on the phone, on his headset, walking through the airport. But I can tell you that when I'm browsing for books at Barnes & Noble, at Bookstop, or whatever the place might be, or at Tattered Cover, or at Powell's Books, or Chartwell in New York City, I love being able to open books, and I riffle through them pretty quickly. And it is amazing to me how quickly a book stands out. Now, I have my own rationale for what I consider to be a good idea, and for me, it's utility, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, is there a useful thing in here? Now, there are books that I want to read that in a paragraph I'm like, wow, this is very insightful, and I might still get that book, but really the critical factor for me is it usable? Because, as you know, we rail against all the books out there about management and careers and executive life that talk a great story but don't actually tell you what to do. And so I just flip through and I'm looking for things that grab me. And the standard is 3. And I'll tell you why it's not 2 or 1. If it's 1, I'd be buying every book. Not every book, but nearly every book.
Yeah, every book's got an idea.
It's
otherwise,
not high enough. Yeah.
Otherwise, it's not worth publishing.
And 2 is also not enough because I can find a couple hundred books every trip. So therefore, I took it to 3. You go to 3, and there are very few books that meet that criteria. And suddenly now I'm only walking out with 2 or 3 books. And
funnily enough, if there's 3, there's probably 300. It's either there's a kind of tipping point.
Yep, exactly.
At which something becomes very useful.
Yeah. So if you're flipping through a book and you can see 3 things that you would highlight, that if you were reading it at home, you would say, okay, I've got to remember that. In my case, I dog ear it. My mother would kill me. You can't deface a book in any way, but they're my books and they tell the story of my professional life in some cases. So I dog ear and highlight and exclamation points and smiley face and the whole thing. If you can find 3 things, then I buy the book. That's my criteria. Now look, let's be honest. I don't want to carry those books in my briefcase. I don't, right? I used to have a great Hartman briefcase with a shoulder strap, and I would come home with bruises on my shoulder from all the hardback books before there were Kindles, before there were Nooks, before there were whatever there are. In our case, it's iPads with Kindle software on them, right? So you can use the store just for flipping purposes, if you will. Now, I suppose this is the bookstore version of showrooming.
Exactly,
right?
yeah.
But frankly, I often buy stuff in bookstores as well. They don't want me not walking in just because I could also buy on Amazon. Yeah. And I'll tell you something else, guys. I never get on a plane unless a calamity has happened, that I don't have physically printed reading material for that time where they make me turn off my iPad.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got magazines. I'll buy a magazine I'm not that interested in, simply to have something to read.
There is nothing worse than having another hour to go on a flight, your battery being dead, and you've already read the in-flight magazine. You have to read Sky Mall.
Yeah, just so you know, folks, I want to correct Wendy here. We don't read in-flight magazines, and we certainly don't look at Sky Mall. They make you stupid. I think that's pretty much what they do. You just don't do it. If you're sitting next to somebody who's evaluating you and you got nothing to read and the next thing you know you're reading Sky Mall, it's like, dude, you can't be that busy. You must not be that important. You must not be that good. Yeah. Now, you used this as an example when you were writing this cast, right?
So I was sitting in the assistant's room in your house,
Right.
And actually your office was shut, so I couldn't get to the big bookshop, the big shelf. And behind me, I just grabbed a book off the shelf, and it just happened to be The Effective Executive, which is, we already know it's
nothing
awesome.
wrong with that, right?
But I thought I'd test it properly, and I turned to three completely random pages, and so these are the 3 quotes. So I will read them because then everybody will get the benefit of the quotes as well as knowing that a great book has at least 3 great ideas. So the first one I found was, in a well-managed enterprise, it is understood that people who fail in a new job, especially after a promotion, may not be the ones to blame.
Genius. No one says that but Drucker. We've been saying that for years. Yeah. Genius.
I was like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that was a random page. Okay, so the second one is, it is much easier to draw up a nice list of top priorities and then to hedge by trying to do just a little bit of
everything. I remember this one.
trying to do just a little bit of everything else as well. This makes everybody happy. The only drawback is, of course, that nothing whatever gets done.
Yeah. Drucker understood Napoleon's mantra about mass at the point of decision. Pick the one thing. Pick the one thing and work on the one thing. Not the 7, not the 21, not the 8, the one.
And I immediately ripped up 3 pieces of paper on my desk.
We got to get to these things too, right? Yeah. Good.
I was like, nope.
Okay.
Okay, and the last one. The effective decision maker, therefore, always assumes initially that the problem is generic.
Oh, Drucker is so good about generic versus specific, right?
He always assumes that the event which clamors for his attention is in reality a symptom. He looks for the true problem. He is not content with doctoring the symptom.
And you know what? It's interesting you picked that random page. I gave a talk, it's probably 15 years ago. I want to say it was at Duke, but it may have been at Chapel Hill. And the talk was about when you're fighting fires, you're addressing symptoms. And that's why you keep having to fight fires. And for many managers, or even professionals, that makes them feel good. They feel a sense of accomplishment that the fire is out. But if you have a cold your entire life and all you do is treat the symptoms, but you always have a cold, that's not a good way to be effective.
It's not a cold.
Exactly.
And what I love about Drucker is not only is it, are they great ideas, they're just so beautifully written.
Yeah,
and
well.
I'm so jealous. This is the best writing on the entire 2 pages.
Because it's dense, right? It's so dense, yeah.
It's lovely.
Yeah. And look, there are 3 great ideas there. 3 things which I can't imagine wouldn't change your perception of a situation, your approach to your do list, whatever, how you look at a situation, whatever. Now, look, these things don't have to be things you're dealing with right now. In fact, it took me a couple of years of reading to realize that I need to be thinking about 5 and 10 years ahead. I needed to have solutions now or be wrestling with ideas that I'm going to deal with later now so that 5 years from now, it's not like, oh, I'm going to have to solve a whole new set of problems. I've already thought about them. Mm-hmm. I remember reading about strategy when I was about 25 years old, when I was in the Army, thinking someday I'm going to have to decide strategy questions and I better start thinking about it now. And I remember Michael Porter back then going, okay, thank you. And it was still a lot over my head, but I knew I had to have some basic framework. Yeah. So next time you're fighting a fire, guys, go back to Drucker. Remember what he says about doctoring the symptom. If you've never read the book, then you won't have that thought to go to. Exactly. I love that.
It's all about having stuff in your arsenal, even if it doesn't look like it's effective now. If you don't read now, then you won't have it when you need it.
And I have to tell you, I think the folks you look up to at the top or mid-level top of your organization, they didn't magically get all this knowledge when they were 10. They haven't necessarily been through every situation your firm is facing. They read, they studied, they paid attention, they trusted themselves, they put together all that innate historical knowledge, and that allowed them to get closer to a true solution to the problem you're facing because of all that banked knowledge that may not come directly to the fore and be, oh, I read a book and on page 12 it told me exactly how to solve this problem. No, it was a way of thinking about something which informed the solution development that they used. And so you just can never, ever, ever stop reading.
No.
Yeah. Okay.
The next way of finding a book to read is to look for the most recommended book on Amazon, because there's a gazillion people on Amazon and a gazillion people can't be wrong. And the volume of sales and recommendations on Amazon cancels out any nefarious people that
You think so?
I think so.
I've just been reading some stuff that says that we've got these people that are, that are zinging it, or there are people that are in it that are pumping something up and they're really a publisher.
They're writing their own quotes and all of that kind of stuff. I just think that there's so much stuff on Amazon that they can't have that much effect.
Yeah. I also find, this is my favorite, simply because I always felt if I were choosing my books, first of all, it was only the books that the bookstore I was in chose. And guys, I hate to say this, but bookstore people aren't managers. They're not thinkers about management. They're probably fiction readers. They may, in fact, have kids and be interested in kids' literature. They may be geographers or something, but they're probably not managers. It's just like journalists. Journalists, write about management. It's like, no, guys, really, no, that sounds nice in theory, but that doesn't actually work when you have real people working for you. So I always felt I was solving my own problems, trying to solve what I knew, and my scope was limited by whatever the bookstore stocked, and oftentimes how far I would bend down to look at the bottom shelf, right? You want to be on the top shelf. The moment Amazon started recommending books, I realized, oh my gosh, these are what other people think.
In my position.
Exactly. I think all kinds of other people. And what I do is I look at the ratings, and then I start looking at who wrote what they wrote. And if I see a person attacking a book because of the point of view, and then I read the writing of the guy who's attacking, I go, okay, I know where this guy's coming from. I can ignore him.
Yeah.
Right? It is, to me, it opened up all kinds of other books that I would never have looked at because of scope or because of timing or whatever. And it helped me understand why people recommended the way they did. And I found a qualitative advantage for me in saying, okay, I'll take that one and not this one. Amazing. I mean, randomly picking the number one book on Amazon in almost any managerial topic is never going to steer you completely wrong.
No, exactly. And the idea of this cast was to work from, I've got nothing. I have no books in my house and I don't know where to start. One place to start is the top 10 on Amazon. It
occurs to me that now that we're recommending books and people say, I have no books, and so somebody's going to write in and say, Mark, why didn't you recommend your book? And so anybody who writes in that does that, I'm going to ignore your email. I'm not even going to promise when it's going to come out.
It's delegated to the floor.
Yeah. Now, you and I did share before the cast about that some of the recommendations are swayed by recency.
Yeah.
The way Amazon's algorithm works is...
Yeah, if you look at the top 10, you can quite clearly see that the more recent books tend to be higher up. And that's part... Sure. I guess there's an algorithm there that, they don't really want the effective executive to be the number one book for 100 years. That would kind of affect their sales.
Yeah, exactly.
So more recent books tend to be higher up.
But I think in the professional arena, the books that are good from 10 years ago are still going to bubble up, right?
Oh, yeah. When I looked at the top 10, and they were mostly recent-ish, within the last 5 years. But when you look at the top 20 and the top 30, then you start to get a really broad range of, like, good to great, which was like
Drucker,
80s.
Collins, Porter.
Exactly. Oh, and all of those people are in the top 10. It's just their most recent books and not necessarily the ones you'd start with.
Yeah, okay. If you need a book on a particular subject you've never heard of before, you don't have any sense of something, then what else do you have but what hundreds of other people said, and it's a 4 or 5 stars or something like that?
Yeah, so I picked up random nanoplastics just as,
And look, let's do it the other way around now. You could choose not to buy from Amazon and go to your local bookseller.
Oh, you could just use Amazon as the research method. And I know
reverse showrooming.
Exactly. And there's plenty of people that want to support their local bookstore and would prefer to go order there, and that's absolutely fine if that's how you feel. But you can still use Amazon as a research tool.
Yeah, I do think that electronic books are really hard to argue with. I have several hundred books in my iPad. I'm pretty assiduous about keeping it charged, and I can refer to a book that the only way I could have done that before is if I were at home in my library. Yeah. Which I'm not.
Which is
is
pretty cool. My only other problem is it's far too easy to say buy and not to get through the list of reading. Yes.
Oh, okay, yes. The list is too long,
The list of to read is Yeah. But maybe that's a problem with shopping rather than anything else.
Yes. And the last one is get a recommendation from us, from Manager Tools.
Yeah, exactly. So we have book reviews on our site. So if you've never read a management book, that's a great place to start. There's all of the books that we recommend and some of the ones that, or all of the ones that our members have recommended as well, ranked by stars with comments and all of that kind of stuff. And all of the books that we recommend have been around for a while because if they're great books, they're still,
Yeah,
I mean, Drucker is still awesome.
Yeah.
40 years late, 50 years later.
Let's also add something else to the manager tool. We certainly have the forums as well, right?
Yeah.
You can go to the forums. If you want a book on anything, there's somebody in our forums, somebody in our site who can help, who has some experience. And frankly, we'd like you to contribute as well. If there's a book you've read that's been helpful, contribute back to the community, guys. That's why the forums exist. I know a lot of you want Wendy and I to answer all your questions, but there are a lot of smart people in the forums, and there's only 2 of us. And the forums bring great people together, and you can contribute, and it's a wonderful collaborative environment where and it's free. All you have to do is sign up.
You can't go wrong recommending a book for another manager. You might feel like you might give the wrong advice on a complex situation, but you can't go wrong recommending any book.
Yeah, I'll tell you something else too. There are people who say, well, I don't know that my book, people may, just look, if you're young or if you don't have a lot of experience, say, look, I'm kind of young. I don't have a lot of experience, but I read this book and I really liked it.
Yeah.
And what you're doing is you're saying, I read it. There's nothing wrong with sharing. I'm uncertain in this area. If somebody asked me about how to build a parking lot. Okay, sorry, a bad example. I happen to know the book is called The Dimensions of Parking. It's an awesome book. But if you ask me something about laying undersea cable, I would say, I don't know, right? But probably if somebody told me I had to learn, I'd go read 3 or 4 and I'd say, you know what? I've only read books. I've never laid a cable, but this is the one that taught me the most.
This is the one that made most sense to me.
And if you qualify your recommendation and say, you know what? I don't have a lot of experience. And then the best guy in the forums, the guy with 20 years experience, says he's right. That's a great one. A, your credibility is improved. B, you feel better now about what you learned. And C, you've given somebody else an opportunity to show themselves to be smart and also to echo what you're saying. And then everybody's going to run out to buy that book, those people who are on that thread.
And that whole, what you've just recommended goes for life and work as well, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Yeah.
Speak up.
Yes. And speak up and admit, look, I'm not an expert and this book, I really found it helpful. And I'll tell you something else. We mentioned manager tools as an aside. Send us a mail. Customer service at manager-tools.com. Anybody know, if you don't want to go to the forums or if you tried and you didn't get an answer, send one request for a book recommendation. It'll come to Wendy or me, and we'll make a recommendation based on what we know.
Yep.
People are sending me books all the time. Have you read this book? If I haven't read the book, ask the people who have asked me. They'll tell you, Mark went and got the book and read the book and told me what he thought. And frankly, some of them have been great, and they weren't books that I would have read. There's a great book I just finished reading for the second time called Who's in the Room? Really, really good. Somebody recommended it. I read it. Really excellent. So add to the manager tools list, the book list, and the forums. Be willing to send us an email if you really need help and you can't find out anywhere else.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah.
3 great ideas. Most recommended book on Amazon, my favorite. Okay. And Mike will kill me for manager tools not being a favorite. And then, of course, the 3 possibilities on manager tools.
Yeah. And then our last thought was, you might be thinking, I don't need to read a book. I can Google it, or I can Wikipedia it, or I can.
And there's some benefit there,
blogs,
right?
But the kind of depth of thinking that you get, and the kind of the following of an argument you get through a book, and the kind of explanation you get, explication you get from a book is very different to reading blogs. And I have 350 blogs on my blog reader, so I'm a huge blog reader.
Wow.
But
I have none.
But I still read books because there's something different about them.
Yeah, it's the difference between knowing the answer and being able to do the work to get the answer yourself.
Exactly.
Right? That's why we recommend to read.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Cast. Well done.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. That's it. We'll see you next week. In the meantime, have a great one. So long.